back in the 1980s and early 1990s, the hot hatchback was king. And it was easy to understand the appeal with that genre of car, because here was a small, practical, cost-effective hatchback that was turned into a very sporty and very fun car indeed. So fun was it, in fact, that the hatchback effectively killed off the two-seater sports cars that preceded them. The problem, however, for the hot hatchback was when the international bright young things that were buying them grew up. But that really wasn't too much of a problem, because the manufacturers who built them were there to oblige them. Because if you couldn't fit your small little Essex boys and girls in the back of your XR3i, then Ford would happily sell you a Sierra XR 4x4. And if your 2.4 children didn't fit in the back of your 2-litre Astra GTE 16 valve anymore, then of course step this way, sir, because we've got for you the Cavalier GSI. And of course, when you couldn't get your little Lion Cubs in the back of your Peugeot 205 GTI, then Peugeot were the ones that would step forward and say, here's a 405 MI16 for your little pride. But since then, as much as the hot hatchback has had a bit of a resurgence of late, that mid-size sports saloon that sort of was there for those people that grew out of the hot hatchbacks doesn't really exist anymore. Because what was happening was the manufacturers were finding that with cheap lease deals, people were flocking to things like BMW 320DM Sports and Audi A4S lines. You didn't have to spend a fortune getting a high-powered M3 or Audi S4 when you could get something that looked like one, but with a cost-effective diesel engine. And then, of course, there was the curse of the SUV and the crossover. Because nowadays, you can't even buy a new Ford Mondeo or a Vauxhall Insignia. Renault's range doesn't have a mid-size saloon anymore. It's just full of crossovers and small SUVs. But thankfully, Peugeot have stayed the course with the spiritual successor of the 405 MI16. And not only have Peugeot given us that spiritual successor to the 405 MI16, but they've also enhanced it for the modern world that we live in, that is electrification, because this one is a hybrid. Welcome to this week's new car review. Welcome to the Peugeot 508 Peugeot Sport Engineered, and welcome to House of Cars. Now, before I get started on the review of the newly revised Peugeot 508 PSE, I'd ask you, if you are new to us, to maybe subscribe to the channel, because this is quite a new channel that I've started. And if you do enjoy it after you've watched this video, then give it a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, leave me some of your comments down below. Let me know what you think about the cars I'm reviewing and featuring on the channel, and of course what you think of the channel as a whole. And if there's any suggestions that you might have of cars that you think I should cover, then please pop them down there as well, because I will look at them, your comments. Right, if there's a market sector that I think has seen a massive shift in the last 10-15 years, it's in this part, the D segment saloon. Every manufacturer had a foothold in this market sector. Ford with the Cortina, the Sierra, the Mondeo, Vauxhall obviously with the Cavalier, the Vectra, the Insignia, Renault, they had obviously the Renault 21, and then they had the Laguna, Nissan, the Bluebird, then the Primera. It just goes on and on and on. Every manufacturer had something in here. But now they've pretty much all gone. Nobody had, let alone a sports saloon, they've pretty much deserted the saloon market. Now that's twofold, as I said. The reason for that's twofold, like I said at the beginning, because there was the onslaught now of the sort of like the SUV / crossover, which pretty much people now see as the default sort of like choice of a family now. And of course there was those cheap lease deals that came along, BMW 320DM Sports, there used to just be loads of them kicking around, still is, because why would you drive around in a Ford Mondeo when you can have a BMW parked on your drive? It's an aspirational thing, a BMW. Except now it's really not, because a BMW is quite commonplace. Their market share is bigger than Ford's. It's bigger than the likes of Peugeot, Renault, Citroën, Nissan, Toyota combined. That's how big BMW now are in the UK market. But Peugeot Hats off to them. They've been doggedly determined to stick in this space. And of course, we've had things that took over from that: 405, the 406, the 407, admittedly not the prettiest car in the world, and now, of course, the 508. And if that even gets better, they've done a sports version of it, which is this, the Peugeot Sport Engineered. Odd name, but then MI16 hardly tripped off the tongue either. But as I say, this is quite an interesting car because it's not just a big engine sports saloon that obviously people like BMW and Audi would traditionally have done. This is a hybrid. It uses a 1.6 turbocharged 4-cylinder engine mated to electric motors. So why would you buy one of these instead of a BMW 3 Series or an Audi A4? And dare I suggest, should you? Well, I think you should. And to tell you why, I've brought it to a slightly grey and slightly cold Cornwall. Stick around, because I think you're going to find this quite interesting. But before I start on the road test, let's take a look at the actual main points of the revised Peugeot 508 PSE. Well, it's available in two body styles, either this, a 5-door fastback, or a 5-door estate Peugeot call the SW. It's powered by a 1.6 litre turbocharged petrol engine that's mated to 2 electric motors with drive delivered through an 8-speed automatic transmission. It has a maximum power output of 360 brake horsepower. As it's a hybrid, it's also capable of running on purely electric power alone, up to a maximum claimed range of 32 miles, according to WLTP figures. And prices start from £53,975 for the 5-door to £55,175 for the SW before options, which is more expensive than the BMW 330e plug-in hybrid, which can do a similar amount of electric-only range and actually isn't that much slower. And it's not that much cheaper than the 340i xDrive M Sport, which is considerably faster, and dare I suggest, the more kind of default option. So should you consider the Peugeot 508 Peugeot Sport Engineered, or should you just say, give it a little bit of a nod to its existence and just sort of like say, ah well, it's a new Peugeot, and wander off down to your BMW showroom and order one of those two? Well, the only way we're going to find out is by reviewing it in this week's House of Cars. Now, I'm going to start with the design of the car because that's the first thing that really grabs you about it. Now, the predecessors to this car that I was mentioning there, Peugeot's design over the years, it's been a bit hit and miss, if I'm being perfectly blunt about it. The 405, I think, way back in the 1980s when it was launched, was one of the best looking cars in that sector. There's no doubt about it. It was a pretty car. I don't know if you're my age, you'll remember the advert they had of it kind of driving alongside a blazing cornfield with Berlin's Take Your Breath Away from Top Gun playing. It just looked good. And of course the 405 MI16, the sports variant, looked even better. And of course Peugeot were on a bit of a roll then with their sort of like the sports, sort of like the performance cars, you know, the 205 GTI, the 309 GTI, those cars. But we'll talk about that a bit later. Let's get back to styling, because what then happened was the 406 came out. Again, a really good looking car. But then it was replaced by the 407, and Peugeot, they got that whole kind of big guppy mouth thing going on. It just, I don't know, they just lost the way, you know, they got out in the dark, I don't know what was going on. They just didn't have a good looking car in their repertoire. Well, the styling's back, and I'm pleased to say, because I think this thing is a stunning looking car. And I've had it now for a few days, and everyone, whether it's been, you know, when on the motorway driving down here, or whether it's been locally, we've been stopped or whatever, people have been coming up to me. There's a guy in a Tesla come up to the other day and said, "What is that?" I said, "That's a stunning looking car." Of course, your Tesla's hardly a design classic, but even so, this thing just looks amazing, I think. Now, this has had a facelift, because when it first came out, it had the kind of the saber tooth kind of DRLs running down the side there, which I think the pre-facelift car was a great looking thing. And all they've done is really made it even better in my book. Because look at it, you've got your 3-claw kind of daytime running lights here. You've got these really slim LED headlights, and then this kind of blacked out kind of front grille area here that's got lots going on. And then, you know, going along with this kind of 3-claw design, you've got your 3 fluorescent slashes there, your claw marks, to signify it's the Peugeot Sport Engineered. A lot of manufacturers talk about sort of like their design influence and maybe some of their engineering coming from a racing program, but genuinely you can actually see quite a lot of Peugeot's Le Mans hypercar in this car, I think. I genuinely do. There are elements of it that when you look at that sports car, that racing car, you go, yeah, that I can see why they can say that, because it does look a little bit like this car in some respects. It's not overly fussy. There's a lot going on, admittedly, around the front here, and as I say, because it's the PSE, you get this kind of blacked area here, you get something like more kind of areas down the front there, you get slightly more kind of jutting front spoiler, and of course you get the new Peugeot shield rather than the line that's on the top there. And it doesn't have the 508 nomenclature anymore on the facelift, it's just got the Peugeot Sport claw marks. But I think it looks fantastic, certainly from the front. There's a bit more aero goes on around here, and you'll see that round the car, these little kind of dive planes around the side there, just to direct the airflow. I am in a very muddy field because it's the only quiet place I could find. So the car is very, very muddy, and I apologise for that. I'm really sorry, Peugeot. I will clean it before it comes back. But yeah, as I say, these dive planes kind of around the side. There's some aero work down the side of the car, which I'll show you in a second. And this nice kind of just not too heavily sculptured bonnet, but it's a good looking car from the front, as I like it. It's only available in 3 colours. You can either have it in white, black, or the selenium grey, which is a metallic, and I really do like it. And it's a no-cost option to have it in this, and I think it looks really, really good in the car. But let's take a wander around the rest of it and see what we think. Now, there's 2 body styles that you can have the 508 PSE in. You can either have it in the saloon model, or as I think is more of a fastback, but I'll show you around the back in a minute. But you can also have it as an SW in Peugeot speak, station wagon, or as we say in the UK, estate model. And I'm genuinely conflicted what I think is the better looking one, because I think the practical, and there's something cool about having a fast estate that's a bit more kind of fly under the radar, quick. But I think this thing just looks amazing. I love the design of this fastback, so I don't know which one's the best, in my opinion, but let me know what you think down below. Right, what have we got? We've got your kind of blacked out 20-inch alloy wheels. 20-inch wheels on this style of car, you might think, oh, that's going to be really rubbish ride quality. Haha, you're in for a surprise. Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres on it. As I say, very muddy because I've driven through a dirty field. Apologies, Peugeot, but I will clean it before I bring it back to you. How do you know you've got the Peugeot Sport Engineered, or you're looking at that? As I say, you've got your extra aero at the side, but you've got your lime green or acid yellow, or whatever you want to call it, brake calipers. Now, they're big brakes on these cars. It's 4-piston calipers up front, and I think they're 380mm ventilated discs at the front as well. Coming down the side, what have you got? You've got your gloss black mirrors with, of course, your side repeater in there. You've got your privacy glass at the back, which I personally like because I've got a young daughter and I don't really like, sort of people being able to look in when she's there. You've got more aero work down here. The only thing is, the sort of like the lines on it, they're just stickers. They might come off, so just be aware of that as well. But it does protect a little bit, I suppose, of the paintwork because of that. There's a fuel cap here, and there's a fuel cap there on the other side as well, because that's your petrol cap there, and on another side is your charging port for you, because it's a plug-in hybrid. And I'm going to talk about battery size, economy and all that in the usability section later on, so stay tuned for that. See what I mean about this design? Look at it, the swooping back that it comes into. It's a 5-door, so it's not a booted saloon, it is a hatchback. And there's no rear wiper on it, which would normally bug the bejesus out of me, but actually, in fairness, because it's so steeply raked at the back, because it just comes down, it's just swooping back. Honestly, rain does not gather on that at all. And then we move round to the back with more aero work just at the back there. But the back's just as good looking as the rest of it, trust me. See what I mean? I mean, look at it. Again, no line badge on it. And actually, it doesn't have the Peugeot shield either. It's just got Peugeot blacked out, all murdered out on this black strip that runs between the 2 lights. Now, these rear lights have had a redesign on the facelift as well. So again, they've got this really nice kind of LED light signature under the Perspex covers, and I really do like these. At the bottom, as I say, more aero work. You've got your dive planes at the side there that just kind of direct the airflow around, and you've got this kind of diffuser section which brings airflow up from underneath, and your twin exhaust pipes there. Reversing camera, it's my only bugbear slightly, because obviously, as you can see, I think it's a bit dirty because it's been above the number plate. And you've got your boot release, which is tucked right underneath that plinth there, which actually isn't too bad for getting dirt. And you can release it from inside the car. And you've also got a release on the key. So, first things first, design-wise, Peugeot back on a roll. This is a phenomenally good looking car. It's not fussy, I don't think. There's a style about it. It's not trying to emulate things like when BMW, as much as I like BMW at the moment, their design work, it's not the best, let's be honest with you. The 3 Series, even though it's their kind of crown jewels, it just, I don't know, it's a bit fussy looking with fakery and the grills and stuff like that, and that big nostril at the front. Audi's starting to get a bit derivative. I've always liked Audi design, but I think it's getting too derivative. I genuinely don't know whether I'm looking at an A4, an A3 saloon, an A6 anymore. They all look the same, that Russian doll styling. The only manufacturer that I think is sort of like coming out and sort of like challenging Peugeot when it comes to design is of course Alfa Romeo. And I'm going to be bold here and say something. As much as I like the Giulia, the new Giulia, I don't think it's as good looking as the 159 that it replaced. So in this sector of the market, I think it's the Peugeot that takes the spoils. What do you think? On looks alone, would this tempt you? Or would you rather walk past the Peugeot dealership and down to your local BMW dealership and buy another 320DM Sport? Let me know in the comment section down below. Now I'm going to class this more as a fastback rather than saloon, because you can see it's that kind of 5-door shape. So in some respects, the cars that you maybe see it competing with might be more likes of the Audi S4 Sportback, the BMW 4 Series, you know, the Grand Coupe, that style of car, rather than the 3 Series and the Audi A4 itself, because it's that more kind of stylish fastback design. Practicality wise, really good I think, in fairness. That is a boot space of 487 litres. Now I brought a pile of stuff down here the other day because we're down in Cornwall on a family holiday over Easter, and stupidly didn't take a photo or film of the stuff that I had in here to actually show you what was in the back there. So there you go, shot in foot. You can fold down the rear seats, in fairness, to increase the luggage space up to 1,537 litres. But if you need more space than what this car gives you, as I say, remember it also comes as an estate version, the 508 SW. And that will take capacity up to 530 litres as standard and just under 1,800 litres with the rear seats down. So that's, if you need more space, that's what you've got. 60-40 split rear seat, as I say, and you've got a load-through facility hatch. So if you're at B&Q or whatever and you're buying a curtain pole and you've got rear passengers, you don't have to fold all the seats down just to pop it through, or you're going skiing or whatever, you can put an extra set of skis through there. The only kind of downside is you've got this kind of rigid kind of parcel shelf here and another one kind of there, so maybe a blind might have been a bit better, but it is very well secured in there, in fairness. The only thing that I'm really not keen on is this underfloor bit of storage here. Because remember, it's a plug-in hybrid, so you've got your cable for plugging into public chargers. Now, in most EVs, and if you're interested in EVs, by the way, I should also say that I host another channel, Auto EV. So if you're into electric cars, look at that channel. This is not, we're not going to do electric cars here, we're just going to do combustion engine and hybrids and stuff here. Anyway, most EVs have a good bit of underfloor storage, but of course, because it's a plug-in hybrid, you don't get that. So you've really got to, I don't know, learn how to fold that cable properly, and I haven't done. It's just a bit awkward, and it means you can't kind of get the boot floor down properly. So that's not ideal. But in fairness, as I say, in terms of a 5-door family car, I don't really see you needing much more than that. But as I say, if you do, you'd buy the estate one. Now, rear seat space. It's all right, in fairness. That's my driving position. So just bear in mind, I'm only 5'8". If you're 6 foot and you've got sort of like a tall teenager in the family that's going to sit behind you, that's where you're going to start to have a little bit of a problem. It's all right for me sitting behind someone my size, or my daughter who's 10, she can sit behind me. There's not a problem there. There's a little bit of sculpting out of the backs of the front seats. Obviously you get luggage net storage there, but in terms of seat space, I could sit behind someone my size, for a couple of hours. But if you're taller as a driver, you've got taller rear passengers, it's going to start to get a bit tight. Headroom's okay for me again, again, it's fine. But taller people, that's where you're going to maybe struggle. So maybe the estate version, the SW, where it's got that longer roof line that goes slightly further back, might be the better option for that. But if it's small children, like my daughter, no problem at all. She's been sitting in her car seat absolutely fine in the back here. Right, what have we got? Okay, so as I say, you've got that little hatch through there if you want to put a long load in there. A couple of cup holders obviously in your armrest. Mat pockets in the backs of the seats, and actually decent sized door bins. They're okay, fairness. You can get another water bottle in the door bins, and as I say, like the fronts, they're lined with carpet. There is a transmission tunnel. Obviously it's not a completely flat floor. Would you get someone sat in the middle seat? Probably, if they were a child. Again, sort of up to the age of sort of like, I don't know, teenage years. Yes, anybody bigger than that, they're going to struggle a wee bit. 2 USB-A ports down the back there. The only bugbear I've got is these ISOFIX points that Stellantis group, which obviously Peugeot's part of, they're behind these stupid zips. God, they're awkward to get open. In fact, that one I can't even. Oh no, I can't even open that. So that's the only thing. It'd be nicer if they had like the kind of BMW style where they've got the little plastic covers that you just flip up and clip the seat in. That's awkward, I think. So yeah, so a bit of a mixed bag in the back here in terms of rear accommodation. It's okay for the style of car that it is if you've got smaller people or children. If you carry around large adults, or say you've got larger teenagers and you're tall yourself as a driver, that's where you're going to struggle a little bit. Stylish, comfortable, quality. 3 adjectives I'm going to use to describe the interior of the Peugeot 508s. And that's maybe not 3 adjectives you would normally relate to Peugeot of the past. I mean, if you remember the old 1980s cars, the 405, the 309, the 205, grey brittle plastics, really cheap feeling column stocks, really just not seat materials that didn't feel particularly nice. That's gone. If that's your memory of Peugeot, even from, dare I suggest, 10, 15 years ago, throw it out of the window, because this is a completely different interior. Now, I got on really, really well with it. I do like it. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, however, but it is mine. But it's still not perfect. And let me just start with the bits that I don't like about it. The seats are beautifully comfortable. These sport seats, they've just got the right amount of support and grip and lateral support down the sides. You've got an extendable swab. They're electrically adjustable. They're also heated, and you get a massage function on them as well. Front 2 seats. My wife really enjoyed that the other day from the passenger seat. I'm not that fussed about it. She likes it, but I suppose on a longer trip, it's quite nice to have that. So the seats are great. They're made up of different kind of materials. There's about 3 or 4 different materials on the seats, but it doesn't look that over, it's not too much, because you get this nice kind of grippy cloth in the kind of centre of them, the Alcantara, and then the kind of leatherette style, and then you've got this quilted Alcantara at the top here, and then different kind of coloured stitching around it. It doesn't look overwhelming, it looks fine, and actually in terms of how it holds you in the seat, it works really well. So that's the first thing that that is good about the driving position. This wheel, not everyone gets on with this little wheel. I do. It's a weird kind of shape. I think it's more octagonal than hexagonal, because it feels like there's kind of 4 bits around the side there, and then you get the flat top, flat bottom, 2-spoke design. The idea with this is obviously to see through to Peugeot's excellent iCockpit, and that's the first bit that I must admit is a slight issue for me, because when I get the seat and the steering wheel in the right position, I can't quite see what's at the bottom of the screen there. There isn't really anything that I really need to know about, but I find myself constantly doing that, constantly just kind of sitting up and peering over it. So, it's not perfect even for a shorty like me. I'm only 5'8", and as I say, I like to sit low in a car, so I constantly find myself just sitting up a bit to see what's at the bottom of the screen. You can change that screen, however, by using this thumb wheel here. You've got minimum personal energy dials. You can flick it to dials where it changes. You've got 2 kind of dials there, and it just says Peugeot Sport Engineered at the bottom. So I've been kind of using that, but I'd say I constantly just seem to be doing that in case I'm missing something. But as I say, there's different ways you can have it, depending. You can put your navigation up here as well. You can have the map up here from there. Not if you're using Apple CarPlay, but you can have the map up there as well. So there's a way of doing it, so you can kind of overcome that. But as I say, it's not perfect, even for me. But It's fine. The actual visuals of it, however, I love. I love Peugeot's iCockpit, this kind of 3D design. I think it works better, I think, than even Audi's virtual cockpit, which I think is about the best, you know, or certainly without the Peugeot, it's the best out there, where you can really change it. It's a bit more stylish looking. The graphics are just a little bit, I don't know, they're just a bit more stylised, but because they're slightly different colours, they're easy to see at a quick glance. There's a lot of information in the Audi's one. That's why I quite like this more kind of simple kind of layout of this. But, as I say, that's the first thing that's not perfect in that way. As I say, the little steering wheel I get on fine with it. I prefer it in something like this, which is a bit more kind of sporty and a bit more kind of, you know, go-kart like, rather than on a big SUV, which it does appear on. But I get that not everyone's going to get on with it. So, you know, it's something you have to get used to. And I'm going to talk a bit more about the whole experience of the car if you're going to look at a 508 PSE at a local dealer. And I want you to hang around for that, because I'm going to say something quite important later on about it. You get 2 paddles behind the steering wheel for your gear shifts, because it's an 8-speed electronic automatic transmission, and you can manually shift if you want. But again, we'll talk about that driving it. The other thing that's not perfect is when the wheel is in that position, the column stalk down here for your cruise control, it takes a bit of getting used to where everything actually is. You can't see it when the wheel's there. I'd preferred maybe the cruise control to be on the steering wheel rather than the stalk, because until you get used to where it all is, there's a lot on there, and you've got to kind of, I don't know, you've got to kind of peer around the wheel to see what you're touching a little bit. So that's the other bit that I'm not so keen on either. The quality, however, is phenomenal. You know, the buttons on the steering wheel, they're not like Volkswagen are doing with the kind of touch sensitive. They're physical buttons. You've got to press them to make anything work. You know, your volume control on the left for your audio. You know, sort of like changing the dials up there on that one, track selection, Bluetooth, all that's on there too. So that's all right. I like the fact they're physical buttons. And the column stocks, the normal column stocks behind, you know, for your indicators and lights on the left, wipers on the right, they're really nice. They're easy to reach. You know, they're okay in terms of quality. They're all right. They work well enough. There's some physical buttons down the side there for things like, you know, adjusting the lane keep assist, the interior movement sensor, the alarm. That's where the interior release for the boot is as well. You press it twice and the boot goes up. And what else is down there? You can set your kind of precondition time for charging down there, but we'll talk about that in the usability section. You jump across to here, and of course you've got Peugeot's infotainment screen. Now this is all right. I quite like this. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto standard. It's wireless. There is a wireless charging pad. There's a little, there's a gap underneath this big console here with a wireless charge. So it tucks your phone away, and there's good storage. You can see there, I've got my kind of wallet down this cubby hole there. My daughter's sunglasses are in there. That covers up, although I don't really like all this shiny piano black, glossy black plastic. It's all dusty and covered in fingerprints now. There's a good storage bin in there, and I've obviously got space, coffee cup, a coffee flask, and a water bottle there, and the door bins are really good, and they're lined. Thank you, Peugeot. Lined with carpet so things don't rattle around. Sorry, I was talking about the infotainment screen. This is where all your main bits and pieces are, so your advanced driver assistance systems. Now you see when you press it, it does that graphic thing. So it's not quick in the sense of it doesn't immediately just jump up, but it's more to do with style rather than bad software, if that makes sense. Peugeot want it to be a bit more flowy and swoopy and all that kind of thing, because actually when you do press the buttons, everything comes up quite quickly. So, you know, that's fine, that's all there. It just does that kind of graphic-y thing first, which makes it appear slow. Below that, you've got these lovely piano keys, shortcut buttons, so go into your home screen. See, look, there you go, you press that and it just takes a wee bit of time for that to come up. You know, your audio system, your telephone, the car settings that you can go into, the actual sort of like your tiles there, your climate control system, and then your other settings here. You can go into the car, there's a thing called eSave, which I'll talk about when we're driving it, and that's in the kind of settings menu. So there are a few things kind of not buried in settings, but you've got to look for them, is what I'm trying to say. But they are in there if you want to do it, but obviously you've got things like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, which comes on immediately, and it's wireless, as I say, as well, which is good. Drive modes, there's plenty of them. We'll talk about them when we're driving, but there's a button there for it. Your auto transmission is done on this kind of toggle switch here, but as I say, you've also got the manual adjustment there. Electronic park brake. The usual Peugeot thing, you've got to press and hold the engine start button for quite some time before everything actually comes up. And then you've got sort of like some small climate buttons here, so your heated seats, your maximum aircon, your maximum defrost, your air recirculation, your heated rear screen, and then your climate system is there, and a physical volume control there for your audio system. So that's that. So as I say, I think it all works very, very well. My only downside, as I say, is the kind of that wee bit of the screen that's just knocked off by when you get in the perfect driving position. And as I say, some people might get a bit irritated with how slow the screen is. But as I say, it's not its functional, it's not the software that's slow. It's just the sort of like the aesthetics of it that make it slow. That's what you've got to kind of get your head around. The rest of the design of the cabin I really like. This beautiful kind of, it's like a kind of rubber carbon fibre type material that just in this kind of dissects the dashboard. I really like. It's almost kind of got like a shelf there. You know, my wife had her kind of phone sitting up there the other day, and when we were kind of sitting still, she just popped her phone up on the ledge. The only downside with storage is usual Peugeot rubbish when you have a right-hand drive car. The glove box is cut in half because obviously there's a fuse box or something underneath there, or an airbag that means it can't do kind of a full-size glove box. Sort that out, Peugeot, for goodness sake. That's ridiculous. Also worthy of mention is the phenomenally good focal audio system that's in the car as well as standard on this PSE. Really, really good. You get your centre speaker there and you can really adapt the sound quality. I mean, I'm not a big audiophile, but I do like my music in the car, and it is superb. The other thing that I was talking about when we started this section was the quality, and it is very, very good. The build quality is superb. There's a tiny little bit of movement on that console, but not much. But the actual quality of the materials just feels nice. It's even this kind of fake leather on, even on the armrest, it's nice, it's padded. You know, it's got a bit of bounce on it, it's got a bit of bounce back. You know, the dashboard at the top, yes, okay, that bit up there, it is kind of slight more kind of rubber feel to it. It is a bit harder, but there is a kind of nice softness to it. But it's then alleviated by this kind of carbon in the middle. And as I say, the materials that they use on the seat is absolutely superb. Lovely little wheel, as I say, I like it. It falls to hand neatly. Two-spoke design, of course, with the Peugeot Sport badge, sort of like there. And then, as I say, things like, you know, the door handle grabs, you know, the actual interior door handles, these piano keys, you know, they feel cool to the touch. There's just a nice quality feel to the car. It's not Audi levels, you know, or Skoda Octavia VRS levels, but it's very, very good. You know, it's way, way improved from what you would have expected from Peugeot years ago. So don't think of this car being anything like what Peugeot have done in the past, because the interior quality is superb. The usability is good. The equipment levels are phenomenal. The only actual option you can have on the car is a panoramic sunroof. And as I say, one of the other two paint colours on it, and that's it. So yeah, good interior, very usable, not perfect, but it feels special, I think, for the type of car that this is. So, time to get a little bit technical now and talk about what actually drives the 508 PSE, which in the main is this, which is a 1.6 litre direct injection turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It puts out on its own around about 200 horsepower, attached to which is an electric motor, which puts out about another 100 horsepower, and at the back there's another electric motor on the rear axle that puts out about 100 horsepower. Now that doesn't make it a 400 horsepower car, because by the time all the energy is kind of lost and all the rest of it, combined power with all three of these things working in conjunction with each other is 355 brake horsepower, or 360 PS, which is the 360 that you'll see in the title of the car, the actual official title of it. You also get 384 pounds per foot of torque, peak torque, being delivered when it's all working in conjunction with each other. Now, obviously, it's an electric motor. It's not a permanent four-wheel drive car. Now, I'm going to talk about what's happening when you're driving it and in the different drive modes when we're actually out on the road driving the car. So bear with me on that, because we'll talk about that a wee bit later. It sends its power through an 8-speed electronic automatic transmission as well. And in the car is a 12.4 kilowatt hour battery, which should allow, according to WLTP figures, an electric only range of around about 34 miles. It won't do that. Now, if you're into your electric cars and you watch my other channel, Auto EV, you will know that WLTP figures do not relate to real world ranges. I charged the battery in the car up fully the other day, and it was showing a range of electric only range of around about 20 miles. So that's the figure I would think more of in terms of that. Now let's talk about how you charge that battery. Because you charge the car up from this flap on the near side. Now you can charge it from a 7 kilowatt wall box, and if you do that, or a 7 kilowatt charger like I did the other day, to top the battery up to full takes around about, it's an hour and a half if it's absolutely dead flat to full. It was just over an hour for me because there was a little bit of charge in it. You can also charge it from a 3-pin plug overnight. So if you've just got sort of like an outside plug on, next to you on your wall out by your driveway, you could do that as well, and that will take just over 7 hours if the battery is completely flat. But you don't get that cable as standard. You've got to pay extra for that. The downside with it being a plug-in hybrid, of course, is the battery has to go somewhere, which means the fuel tank is a lot smaller in this car. I filled it up yesterday, I brimmed it yesterday, and it was something like £55 to fill it up. On the way down here, I got a complete range, so it's round about 250 miles from my house to where we are in Cornwall, Porthtowan, and I got down here with a full tank plus the battery, and it was showing nothing left on the battery and round about 70 miles left to go in terms of the petrol. So you're looking at a range of just over 300 miles. Now I'm not going to bother quoting MPG figures because there's no point, because Peugeot will tell you, oh, the thing can do 100 and something miles per gallon. Don't be ridiculous. That's not really what people do. People are thinking about, if I fill it with petrol and I fill it with electricity, how far am I going to get? You're looking at around about 300 miles, which isn't brilliant in fairness, because if you think about what maybe a Peugeot turbo diesel used to do, you're probably looking at around about 700 miles. However, the flip side is it's a lot cheaper, because obviously you're not putting as much petrol in it, and if you're charging up, dare I suggest, maybe overnight, because remember you can schedule how you charge it. If you've got a wall box or even just your cheap rate electricity overnight, it's going to be a lot cheaper to brim this up. But do bear in mind you're going to be doing that, as I say, around about every 300 miles. Okay, so out on the road in the 508 PSE, how does it feel? Well, the first thing that I need to say to you is this car takes a little bit of understanding, because it's not quite as it seems at first, and dare I suggest it's probably not quite as Peugeot might have you believe that this car, how this car actually is. Let me explain. So basically we have here a setup that is a 1.6 litre turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder engine up at the front, like I said, 200 horsepower. It's got it has an electric motor kind of bolted onto that as well, and there's another one at the back. So the whole thing combined puts out around about 355 brake horsepower, 360 PS for those of you that deal in new money. And torque is 384 pounds per foot of torque. Now that will give you a 0 to 60 time of roughly 5.1 seconds. And it will also, the figure I think this important one is sort of like its in-gear acceleration, in fairness. So the in-gear acceleration figure of sort of like, 50 to 70 miles an hour is around about 3.1 seconds. So, that's the figure I think is the most important one, in fairness, because that's sort of like real world acceleration. And I think that's pretty decent. Right. I'm just about to go under a low bridge, an underpass, so it's going to go very dark on the camera in a minute because we're at traffic lights as well, so forgive me. Right, there's lots of different modes in this car, and dare I suggest that therein lies a little bit the problem. Let me tell you what the modes are, and let me tell you how best to use them, because that is the key with this car. So basically you've got electric mode. The car will start in electric mode, and obviously if it's got power in the battery, the car will drive on electric motor only. You should get, according to WLTP figures, an electric only range of, I think they say 32 miles. It's not going to do that, in fairness. I mean, at the moment it's showing 40% battery, 4 miles of range. The most I've seen when I've charged it up has been 20 miles. That's the sort of thing you can expect. But in fairness, that might be your weekly commute. You never know, just driving it to and from the station. So in fairness, that's not bad. And you charge it off either a 7 kilowatt wall box or charger, or a 3-pin plug, whatever's more convenient for you. Right, so you've got electric only mode. You've then got hybrid mode, where obviously the car will kind of sort itself all out, it'll deal with stuff, it'll use electric motor, it'll use electric motor and petrol engine, or it'll use engine, depending on throttle position and what you're doing. You've then also got 4-wheel drive mode, where obviously everything's kind of in play, but that's more about grip. It's predominantly a front-wheel drive car, and that's an important thing, so hang on to that thought just for a little bit. And then you've got sport and comfort. Now that's the two modes that I think are the most important, so I'm going to talk about them in just a second. The one further thing I need to tell you about is eSave, because in the screen you can go into what's called eSave mode, and basically save the battery until you need it. So in other words, if you were maybe say driving into a city with an ultra low emission zone like London or Manchester or Glasgow have these days, you can save the battery power and not use it until you get into where you need it, and then just drive purely on electric. So the car won't use the battery power while you're getting to that point, and you just set it up in the screen here. You go into eSave and set it where you want the battery to kind of kick in. Okay, so that's another thing. That's quite clever, I like that. Right, comfort and sport, that's the two I want to talk about, because this car, as I say, takes a little bit of understanding, and therein lies the problem. You look at it, and dare I suggest you listen to Peugeot's marketing, where they talk about, Le Mans winning Le Mans entrance, hypercars, the 9XE or whatever they call it, and all the rest of it, and you go, it's going to be a real B-road blaster, a real pin-sharp driver's tool. It's not. But I don't think it's meant to be. And the more you try and drive it like that, the more disappointed with the car you'll be. Because what the whole kind of hybrid drivetrain system is like, and bear with me because this is a weird analogy, but it will make sense. It's like a really bad business presentation from a really bunch of clever people. Because what you have is you've got all the clever stuff around you. You've got a powerful engine, you've got electric assistance, you've got a battery, you've got an 8-speed automatic, an electronically controlled automatic transmission. But none of them really know what each other's doing, and none of them know which one's going to speak next. So it's like that presentation where they've got all the information, all the clever people there, but none of them know the kind of sequence in which they should talk. I hope that makes sense to you. So it's like they'd be sitting there going, sorry, is it my turn now? Oh right, blah, blah, blah. It's like that. So if you kind of put your foot down like now, now the gearbox responds, and then the electric motor kicks in, and da-da-da. It's not sharp. And if you arrive at a roundabout, and it's streaming down now in the wet, and you go into a roundabout too fast, or you're down a real kind of twisty B road, and you're throwing it into bends, it's just going to understeer, and you're going to get disappointed with the way the gear shifts are. Even using the manual gear shift that's on here, it's a torque converter auto, and it just doesn't react as fast as you want it to. So if I flick it down now, I'll go into 5th gear and accelerate. 6th, there it is. 7th, there it is. See, it's not a dual clutch, it's not bang, bang, bang. Dial it back and stop thinking of it as this kind of B-road blaster, and get it onto the big open A roads like I'm on now, and the whole thing starts to gel. When you're in sport mode, you've got the you've got the sportier settings on the dampers. It's got adjustable dampers that will change depending on the mode you're in, and it will also change the steering as well. So whilst the steering it's obviously electronic, and it feels anodyne like most of these systems are, but in fairness, actually there's quite a nice weight behind it in the sport mode. And also with this little wheel, as you go into a set of flowing bends, not sharp hairpins and stuff, nice open flowing bends, the wheel movement is literally just a little wrist movement. and everything starts to come together, everything starts to gel just that bit better, and it all starts to make sense. What the car is, as I say, is not a pin-sharp driver's tool, but a very fast, very comfortable, very accomplished, and very secure GT car. Get your head into that mode, and this car really shines through. The abilities of this car really shine through. And that's what took me a little time to understand. If you go into your local Peugeot dealership and take one of these out for a 10-minute, 20-minute test drive, you will not get it. You'll not understand what the fuss is all about. And you'll go, yeah, it's all right, it's fine, it does the job. And then you'll walk down to the BMW dealership and put an order in for a 340i. You're missing the point with this car. Take it, if they'll allow you, take it overnight, take it for a weekend drive, because when you get it out onto the more open flowing roads, the whole thing just starts to make much, much more sense. And actually, not only does it make much more sense, but it actually becomes hugely enjoyable. The journey that I'm doing now, you know, it's like between kind of Surrey and Cornwall on the sort of like the big A roads. I've never driven down here. We've been coming to Cornwall now for 9 years. I have never driven a car down here where I've enjoyed the drive as much as I've enjoyed this, because it's made for this type of journey. One minute you've got the kind of open A roads, the next minute you've got some fast moving dual carriageway, the next minute you've got some motorway, and you're back to the the open A roads across, you know, Devon and across the Bodmin Moor and stuff like that. And on a wet day like this, you know, with the all-wheel drive system, with that rear motor, the grip, the security that you get from it, plus that just nice, easy input that it demands of you through these bends, just works. And it is just an incredibly fast car at covering ground. But as I say, stay away from the small roads. This is not a car that you will get up at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning and take on a blast down your favourite B road. It's not. It's too lethargic in the gear shift. It doesn't gel enough between the motors and the engine and everything else to work. As I say, you drive it at 10 tenths and it kind of falls apart. You dial it back a little bit and get it into a flow, and this thing is excellent. An absolute excellent car to cover ground in really quickly, really safely, really comfortably, and very fast. There's a brilliant car in the 508 PSE. You've just got to find it. But trust me, when you do find it, you'll absolutely love it. Would I buy this over a BMW 340i? Do you know what? I think I would. I absolutely love this car. I really do. Now, the last thing I just want to talk about briefly is the brakes. And I should really mention the suspension, because actually the other mode I didn't talk about was comfort. When I'm in comfort mode, everything slackens off a little bit. So the suspension just, you know, goes a little bit softer, and the steering lightens up. In that mode, you've got a very, very even in sport mode, in fairness, the spring and damper rates, I think, are set very well. It's not crashy. You feel surface imperfections, but they don't jolt the car. They don't make themselves known too much. It doesn't just go bang and all of a sudden everything's just horrible. They make their presence known to you, but in the right way. It gives good feedback through the chassis, but not uncomfortably so, if that makes sense. When you go into the comfort mode, as I say, the dampers slacken off a little bit. It never becomes floaty and light. It doesn't do all of this kind of stuff. It's just nice. It's just well controlled. There's good grip from it as well. It's got Michelin Pilot tyres on the car, Pilot Sport tyres on it. There's a great amount of grip, even in bad weather like this. And even in the comfort mode, there's just enough compression in the dampers. You go into a bend, you put your foot down, and you can just feel the car kind of hunker down in grip. And I really do like that. The steering, as I say, at lower speeds is light enough, it's easy to pilot. And I do like this little wheel, as I say, on these kind of roads, because you've just got that, you just need a minimum input. It's more of a movement of the wrist rather than your whole arm. If it was a much bigger wheel, you don't need that. It's a wrist movement, not an arm movement, and that's what I like about it. The brakes, sorry, I keep waffling on. The brakes, I've always had a bit of an issue with the Peugeot Stellantis group brakes on their EVs, because it feels like there's a deadness, a woodenness at the top of the pedal. So when you start to push, it's like, oh, there's nothing there, and then all of a sudden it grabs. It's not like that in here. It's not like that in the 508. There's a nice progression on the pedal. You can feel the brakes working. You've got 4-pot calipers up at the front. I think it's 380mm ventilated discs that are up at the front, and they grip well, and you can really feel sort of like the friction brakes work, and there's just enough feedback through that pedal to let you know you're doing it. There is a brake regen mode like you would get in an electric car. So you press the B button down here, and if I come off the brakes, all of a sudden the car starts to brake itself. It's not aggressive, it's not one pedal driving like you get on some EVs, but it will put a little bit of energy back into the battery. It keeps the kinetic energy coming back and starts putting power back into the battery. The battery charges when you're in the sport mode, otherwise you got to charge it up yourself. But trust me, as I say, I've been using this car pretty much in sport and comfort mode this whole week, because that's the two I think it works well in. It's a really, really good car. It really is. And I'm so pleased that I took the time to get the car and really understand it. Because see, when you do, this is a hidden gem, an absolute hidden gem. I love it. Well done, Peugeot. It's not a 405 Mi16. It's not as sharp as that. It's much more sophisticated. It's much more grown up than that. And it's much more enjoyable in this kind of day and age. It's really good. So what's the price of this car here? Well, if you go for the 5-door fastback, like this one is, you're looking at £53,975. And if you go for the SW, that's 55,175 on the road. The only option you can really have in terms of factory options is the panoramic roof, which is £1,100 added on to that price. There's a choice of 3 colours, black, white, or this selenium grey, which I have to admit I really do like. And it is a metallic grey, although it looks like one of those primer colours. When the sun hits it, not we've got much sun today, I think this looks amazing, and I think it's a really stealthy looking car, which I really do like about it. Now, the first thing to talk about in terms of that price, people are going to turn and say, whoa, how much for a Peugeot? I get that, and I get where you're coming from with that, but let's be blunt about this. Peugeot's not really the sort of like a value for money brand anymore. They want to see themselves as a little bit more of a premium brand, and they are pushing themselves up market a little bit. And I don't think it's as bad value for money. I mean, don't get me wrong, £55,000 is still a whack of change. I'm not trying to trivialise money. But I don't think it's as bad as you first think. And then you're going to think to yourself, oh, I bet the depreciation is massive. Well, yes and no, because oddly enough, I did look the other day, and you can pick up the pre-facelifted car now for just under £30,000 on Auto Trader. You know, and that's like a 3-year-old car that's maybe done round about somewhere between 10 to 20,000 miles. And I was a bit curious as to what else you could buy from one of the other competition from that level. And to be honest with you, you're paying about the same level of money for the same age of BMW 440i Grand Coupe M Sport. You know, they're just under the 30 grand now. Audi's a little bit more, so it holds on to its value a bit more. If you look at something like an S5 Sportback of similar age and mileage, you're probably paying into the 30s for that car. So depreciation isn't horrific. It is there, but I tell you what, under £30,000 for a 3-4-year-old car, that to me is the bargain. That is definitely. So we may as well now discuss what else you might consider rather than the Peugeot 508 PSE. Well, the two cars, as I say, that seems to compete with is that Audi S4/S5 Sportback, and of course the BMW 340i M Sport/4 Series Grand Coupe, depending how you see it. But there are others out there, if you are considering, because remember, this isn't sort of like an M3 rival, it's that rung down from it. So there's things like, of course, Alpha with the Giulia, the Veloce model. That's a sort of, they don't do a plug-in hybrid, Alfa Romeo in that car. Mercedes do with the C300E, but it's not quite as sporty as this car. They do a C43, the sort of AMG car, but in terms of its price, it's way above this. You know, you're into sort of like way above the sort of like 60, 65,000 pounds for that Mercedes. I suppose maybe if you want to be a bit left field, then maybe there's something like, I mean, Jaguar really don't make this sort of like style of car anymore. The XE's stopped production, but maybe there's a few floating around the dealerships that you might consider as well. The car it sort of reminds me of is a car that is no longer in production. That kind of left field choice of that, you know, away from the BMW and Audi kind of default setting. Something like the Kia Stinger. So if you're looking at second-hand cars, then the Kia Stinger might be a car that you might see as a rival for the 508 PSE. I was really keen to drive this car again. You see, because a couple of years ago I did drive it. It was sort of like an industry media day. You know, Peugeot said to me, do you want to have a quick go in one of these? And I took it out on the road for about 30 minutes or so, and I thought, yeah, it's quite a decent car, that's all right, yeah. And that's the problem. That's the issue that I think that the Peugeot has with this. You see, if you just take it out, if you think to yourself you're going to buy one of these cars, this sort of like this segment of car, and you go out and you'll go and drive this, and you'll take it out for a half-hour test drive, and you will give it an appreciative nod and go, yeah, it's all right, and then what you'll do is you'll walk off and then you'll buy the default sort of like BMW 3 Series or the Audi S4. Don't do that. And this is the issue. I've always had a bit of an issue kind of with plug-in hybrids a little bit, because there's a part of me that says, why bother? You know, either go all electric and get yourself something like a Tesla Model 3, or just don't bother and go and get yourself, you know, a 440i BMW or an Audi S4. Don't do that. What you need to do is spend more time with the 508 PSA like I have. Now, I'm not suggesting you take it for a week to Cornwall. I don't think your dealer will allow you to do that. But that's the issue with the car. And in some respects, Peugeot have kind of made a rod for their own back. This is not a pin-sharp driver's tool, but it's not meant to be that way. They talk about sporting heritage with the 9XE or whatever it's called, their hybrid Le Mans car they're coming out with. Forget all of that. Forget any notion of the old 405 MI16, and forget any notion of 205 GTIs and all of those stuff that Peugeot have done really well in the past. Because when you spend more time with this car and you drive it on roads like normal people drive it on, like the roads down to here, fast motorways, open air roads, popping in and out of town to pick up the shop and drop the kids at school, that type of thing. When you use it like that and you're not listening to the Top Gears of the world or the Autocar or whatever that are saying, oh, it's not a pin-sharp driver's tool. It's not. They're absolutely right. But 99% of us don't want that. 99% of us want a fast family car that's comfortable, that we can live with on a daily basis, and it gives us relatively cheap running costs. And that's where this car excels. Because I don't think I've enjoyed coming down to Cornwall as much as I have over the last 8 years than driving this car down here. This is a brilliant car in that type of scenario. You need to give it more time. You need to get under the skin of the 508 PSE and find out what it's all about. Because when you do that, that's when its character comes shining through, and that's when it makes most sense. The problem is, by not understanding the car, less and less people will buy it. And that's a real shame, because the less people that buy this car, it may get to the point where Peugeot decide not to build it or not to import it into the UK. And that would be a real shame, because we'd be missing out on what I think is an absolutely brilliant car. It just takes time to understand it, that's all. And when you do, I think it's phenomenal. Thanks for watching another road test review on the new House of Cars channel. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give it a wee thumbs up down at the bottom there. Make sure you're subscribed as well, because that's going to be important moving forward. And of course, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have you got one of these? Have you got the pre-facelifted one? Are you thinking about maybe, buying the type of car it is, and you haven't considered this? You were going to go and buy a 3 Series BMW. Let me know, because trust me, you want to go and have a drive in this, but a good long drive in it. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I am across social media as well. I've got an Instagram account, which is House of Cars 1973. Don't ask me why, but it is. So go and give me a follow there as well, because that's going to help. And I'll probably come across on TikTok and Facebook and whatever else as well, and LinkedIn as well. So give me a follow across there, because that's going to help too. And as I say, make sure you're subscribed and you've turned on the notifications, because that's the way you'll get notified if when another video comes up and there's a new road test review or a classic car that I'm reviewing, or whatever it is that we decide to do on House of Cars. The stories that we're going to tell here are going to be well worth subscribing to. So please make sure that you do, yeah? It's now started to rain. I need to go and get myself a cup of coffee. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.